Twisha Christian. I want to kind of do a follow-up on this last video that I did concerning the Middle East financial system. And I said that possibly that the Middle Eastern system and our Fed system are the two financial systems that Kim Clement talked about falling apart. Now in the last video, I talked about Finablar, I'm not sure if that's how you say it, and how it was uncovered that they have over $1.3 billion in debt. They tried to cover it up. At first it was $300 million. The banking system has lost hundreds of millions of dollars. And I showed that, major banks were involved in that money. And I also want to give an update on Kim Clement's the X and the P and the number in between. A lot of people have sent me information about maybe it's XRP. But I'm doing some more research on that. But the thing about it is I have found foreign stocks that do represent what he says, as far as the X, a number, and a P. And there are several investments. Now, usually Kim Clement, when he talks about a prophecy, usually it's at least twice. So when you see when he talks about certain investments, he usually brings it up twice. So I am going to do some more research on it, and I want to give it time. I don't want to put something out there that deals with this and then it's not correct. And at least if I haven't come to a conclusion, at least I can show you everything that I have found. Okay, and before we get into everything, I'd just like to thank you guys for your support on the Patreon, the PayPal, and I appreciate you guys' prayer and support. It means a lot, especially through all these times, everything that's going on with my father. And I know right now a lot of people are stressed. They're stressed in many areas. There's a lot of things that are going on, and we will get through all of this. And like what Kim Clement said, that we will recover. So that's one of the things I want to point out, is that I know that the stock markets, they don't look good. And I always, tell people that, when the stock markets are down like this, a lot of times that's when a lot of people do buy. But we also may see it go down even lower. But there are companies that do thrive during economic downturns, and it's just a matter of finding those and investing in those. But we will recover, and when we do recover, it's going to benefit everyone, especially for those of you who do hold dinars. And so in my last video, I talked about the two financial systems. It's possible when I look around what's going on in the world, and I'm trying to look at the two biggest financial systems that are currently out there that have been strong. When it comes to the dinar, the break in the system, and the financial system in the Middle East, so we need to kind of focus on that area. Because it doesn't matter what, if say for instance, if the Middle East was not hurt by this economic downturn, there would probably be no thought to revalue the currency. But what I'm getting ready to show you guys is that the Middle Eastern financial system, it's crumbling. And there's a lot of things that were going on before the virus. Keep that in mind. Saudi Arabia was having a lot of problems. And with the price of oil now, they are hurting. All these countries, all around the world, they're doing all these things to try to keep the economy going, trying to keep it from falling, right? They're just spending billions and trillions of dollars, throwing money at this and throwing money at that. And it's stressing out financial systems all around the world. Now, when I look at the power structure in the Middle East, and this is just the way that I look at it, and you see where Iraq is, they're in the middle of all of this. And one of the things that Kim Clement said, that the power of OPEC will be broken, right? So we're seeing that now. And when I look at this, and you see that Saudi Arabia, you got Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, Oman, UAE, those are all oil powerhouses. And if Iraq was to ever come up economically, all those countries would be affected. Because it's not really going to affect Turkey so much, or Egypt or Sudan. It's going to affect these particular countries. So they actually, a lot of people say, oh, Iran's interfering, this and that. Well, you know what? Saudi Arabia and Kuwait and all these other countries have been interfering in Iraq for way longer than that, because they don't want them to come up. They don't want them to be a powerhouse again in the Middle East. So one of the things that the way I'm looking at this is that the stronghold in the Middle East is Saudi Arabia. And you're seeing their power and their influence wane in the Middle East. And I think that's very important, because if Iraq is to ever thrive economically, economically down the line, 5-10 years from now, they're going to have to get rid of that. The influence of OPEC and the influence of Saudi Arabia definitely needs to be broken. And I believe that we're seeing that right now. And Saudi Arabia has had a lot of problems. I talked about in the last video how there's a lot of manipulation in the markets. And these countries have been sucking money from the rest of the world for the last almost 50 years. They're very powerful. They've been very powerful, very rich. And we're starting to see that go away. So let's go ahead and get into these articles. Okay, and like I said, there are two systems, and we're talking about the United States system, because even when I look around the world, even if Russia or Europe falls, yes, it affects the United States, but I think because of the power structure around the world, I think really the biggest influence, more than anybody else, has been the Middle East. I mean, millions of, probably at this point, since the beginning of all the oil coming out of the Middle East, I'm pretty sure over a billion people have died through wars and everything else. And countries like the United States suffered economically, because if we would have been pumping our own oil, we would have free education, free health care, no taxes, etc. But I'm going to go back to what the Fed chairman said about the financial system. He said it came under severe strain in March. Now, this is important because they were already under strain before. But now, with all the trillions and trillions of dollars going into the markets and trillions of dollars going to stimulus, we are pumping way more money than we can afford to pay back. It said quick action by the central bank helped alleviate many of the stresses, but cautioned that further shocks to the financial system could occur depending on the course of the virus and the amount of damage it does to the U.S. economy. So what other shocks are they talking about that could happen? I mean, we're opening up. Now we are going to see the collapse of different businesses. We are going to see possibly the collapse of some banks that will fail under this. So hopefully there are no more shocks, but we know that one is coming. I know that Clement said there will be a quick recovery, whether that's recovery within 24 hours or several weeks. I've heard both. Like when this thing does happen, it's going to be very quick. The recovery is going to be very quick when the banking system falls, or if the world economic economy just starts to crumble. So, and I've said before in past videos, this is what we are looking for in order for the global currency reset to start to take place. For the dinar to revalue, and then other currencies later on, which is going to help jumpstart our economy. And this is perfect for the Federal Reserve, because now they can print, and they can print out as much money as they want, and they can blame the virus for all the problems. Who cares about what happened in 2019 or all the trillions of debt that we've incurred over the last 20 years? Now they got something to cover up all the things that they've been doing, which is fine, because we all know that it's going to lead to what we've been waiting for. All right, let's go ahead and get into Saudi Arabia, because they're, like I said, two financial systems. I'm looking at the Federal Reserve and the Middle Eastern financial system. All right, Saudi response to fiscal shock centers on record debt plan. Saudi Arabia will rely on the biggest debt program since its debut in international bond markets in 2016 to absorb the shock to the budget from collapsing energy prices and cuts in oil output. The kingdom could borrow $58 billion this year while keeping its drawn down from reserves up to 120 billion rials, as originally planned in the budget. The government is looking at additional spending cuts and may issue as much as an extra 100 billion rials of debt on top of 120 billion rials already announced. The record debt. Saudi Arabia plans to plug the budget gap by selling most bonds since the 2016 debut. Okay, so they're pulling out one of their weapons that they have to try to stop the economy from falling So you can take a look at their debt, and you can see where their debt is today as opposed to it was in 2019, 18, 17, and 16. The kingdom has already tapped international bond markets twice this year and has borrowed a total of $19 billion from local and international investors, according to data compiled by Bloomberg. The reliance on debt is in line with the approach Saudi authorities have taken since 2016. It's a sound strategy as long as there's an appetite from foreign investors for Saudi debt, but it also comes at the risk of tightening liquidity in the banking system if the government relies excessively on domestic borrowing, as happened 4 years ago. Well, what happened 4 years ago? So they were even struggling. They've been struggling for the last 4 or 5 years. They really have. And then this whole situation with the virus, and then the oil war. That's why they can't use oil right now anymore to cover up their debt problems. Okay, now this is very interesting. This article says Brent is trading around $22 a barrel, far short of the $76 the IMF estimates Saudi Arabia needs to balance its budget, leaving officials with limited options to offset the economic plan without crippling public finances. Well, first of all, that's already done, because now their citizens live tax-free. That's changing. There's a lot of things that are changing over there right now because they can't keep up. And this is absolute. There's no way how. I mean, the oil prices. And see, this is the thing. Now, these countries will be able to sustain themselves for a period of time, just like Iraq. They're pulling out all the stops. So the banking system, during what's going on right now, they have to pull out all their weapons to try to stop the economic downturn from getting worse. And that's the period that we're going through right now. And right now, I don't see some of the other pictures to the puzzle being put in right now. So I think we still have time, because they're not going to change their value right now until things are getting worse. I'm talking about like financially. When they are running out of options, when they have pulled out all their weapons. And that's basically what a lot of countries are doing in the Middle East and actually all around the world. So we're talking about over $50 a barrel they need to keep them from dipping into anything else. Okay, I'm going to go over this other article. Saudi financial crisis will spark resistance to plundering of state. The state is asking Saudis to tolerate austerity measures, but what about the billions of dollars spent on Saudi royal family, grand projects, and arms? On Monday, Saudi authorities announced unprecedented measures to salvage its finances from an imminent meltdown caused by mismanagement rather than simply the virus pandemic or the collapse of oil prices. From July, an increase in VAT from 5% to 15% and the suspension of the cost of living allowance, a monthly $266, are both desperate attempts to rescue an economy that has been plundered for generations. So what they're saying is that these people that have been running Saudi Arabia and everything else, they've been taking money from the system, right? They're all living lavish lifestyles. They don't have to pay any taxes. Everybody, a lot of people in Saudi Arabia get monthly checks, and so they never really did anything. They never really saved for a rainy day. It says this move is just the beginning, as the government may resort to the ultimate solution by slashing jobs in the Saudi public sector, cutting the salaries of existing state employees, or simply finding itself unable to pay them at all. The so-called social contract is believed to rest on a bargain. The government provides extensive services. In return, citizens continue to pledge allegiance to the leadership. So the rest of the article just goes into about where all the money where all the money's going, all the money that's spent on the royal family, and how much money is spent on all these massive projects. So I think, especially with what happened that was going on in UAE and Finablar, that you're going to see a lot more of this coming out of Saudi Arabia, and we're seeing it right now. And of course, they're all these countries also too as well have came together, and they're spending billions of dollars to try to influence other countries. You have the war in Yemen. And so there's a lot of money there being spent too as well. So now they're getting ready to start cutting back. And it's going to start affecting the daily life as a citizen of that country. So you're going to expect to see some more downturns in this, because I think that since all these things have been exposed in the Middle Eastern financial systems, and you're going to start to see a collapse. And that's just my theory. I think the Middle East, I think I've convinced myself, at least in theory, that the Middle East could be one of the financial systems that's going to fall. I mean, we already know the banking system is going to fall anyway. Okay, and I'm going to go over this last article. Saudi Arabia, where has all the money gone? With public debt rising and reserve assets falling, the country's economic crisis is on track to escalate in the months ahead. All right, so I've already talked about some of what they're already talking about in the beginning of this article. It talked about Saudi Arabia having one of the lowest debt ratios in the world. And so we're going to go back to debt. The country's total external debt has skyrocketed over the past 5 years. At the end of 2014, a few months before the start of the Yemen war, it was just under $12 billion, showing that the rate has jumped by more than 1,500% in the past 5 years. During the same 5-year period, cash reserves also declined. Report from the Saudi Arabian Monetary Authority shows that the country's total reserve assets were estimated at $732 billion at the end of 2014, but has fallen to $489 billion by the end of 2019, an evaporation of $233 billion within 5 years. See, folks, that's exactly what we're talking about. They had problems beforehand, before all this, and you're really going to see this country crumble. I think it's very important that this country loses its power. It's just one of the pieces of the puzzle that has to come together with them being a big part of the Middle Eastern economy. Now, so they even had to go as far as cutting their all these projects and stuff that they wanted to do. What it was like a $500 billion city that they wanted to build, and all those things have to be put on hold. And those budgets have to be cut, and that's still not going to be enough. Because I think we're getting ready to see this financial system fall. So as I go back and I look at what is considered the Middle Eastern countries and that whole area and that financial system, it's mainly run by Saudi Arabia and its allies like Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, UAE, and we're just starting to see that system fall. And so one of the questions is like, when these systems start to fall, are the banks going to be able to be bailed out? And I just showed you the article. I showed you in the last video about the loan, about Finabler, and how some of these American banks are going to be losing on hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, should the American taxpayers cover that because they made bad loans? Should we bail out the banks again because of their lending practices or how they operate or how they do things? In order for a system to change, you have to let it crash, because then people will see. You can't introduce a new financial system if people are not afraid of the financial system that they're currently in. So, folks, I still believe that we still have some time. I still believe we have some time. There has to be a break in the Middle East. All these countries, they're running out of money, and they're running out of money fast. And they're doing everything they can to plug the holes. Right? But we already know it's not going to be enough, but they're using all the weapons, and that's what has to happen in these financial systems. The Federal Reserve has to use all their weapons. And folks, there's ton of more news out there concerning a lot of these other countries too as well. So you guys do your research, keep looking into it, and you guys are going to see what I am beginning to see. And hopefully that this whole thing is not going to stretch out. I just don't think that the Middle East can handle months and months of financial stress and not bringing in the money for the oil. And that's what has to happen. And I think that's when you saw the oil sector go the way that it did. That led to the beginning of the downfall of the Middle Eastern financial crisis, because that's all they're dependent on is the oil. And so as we look at our economy, and folks, we need to look at this as a good thing as far as on a worldwide scale, because The global currency reset and these changes in the economics, these are things that are supposed to be the people of this world, the people of this generation. It's not supposed to be for the rich. It's not supposed to be for the 1%. It's supposed to be all these things that we're looking forward to is supposed to be for all the people. Freedom, to be financially free from the debt and from the system, because it's the system that keeps us in debt. I mean, right now, if you go to the bank, if you go and take out a student loan of $100,000 to pay for your college, well, where's the central bank getting that money from? You're paying money, you're paying interest on money that comes out of thin air. Out of all the trillions and trillions of dollars the central banks prints, what is it being backed by? Who owns that kind of money? Nobody does. And that's why the system that we're in is not good for anybody in this world. And I look forward to the changes that are coming. It's been a long journey, and I think that we still have to wait it out a few more months. We have to let the stress of the oil prices affect the Middle East, and let that financial system fall. And like I said, I just don't think that they're gonna have the money to bail out the banks. To be honest with you, if the banking system, if the financial system, the Dow falls, you have your Middle Eastern financial system, you have your America financial system with the Federal Reserve. They have spent so much money already, and the banks have given out. They're losing money on all the loans all around the world, whether it's with government, business, corporations, or individuals, mortgages, student loans. Right? You got to remember, nobody's paying their student loans right now. At least you don't have to, right? The banking system is losing money on all sides, and it's stressed, but it's not stressed enough. Because if it was that easy, we could just keep printing money and money. Hey, we'll just give everybody $100,000. If it was that easy to solve the crisis, they would just do it. You're going to see the media start focusing on the debt because they have to. Well, first of all, they have to stop. They have to try to stop this president, because nothing else is working. But if the banking system falls, the only thing because the United States cannot afford to bail out the banking system. And for those of you who know about this, if I'm not mistaken, from the financial crash in 2008 and 9, didn't the banking system implement the Basel? And we were supposed to be at Basel 3 by now, but they had put it off. It was supposed to be implemented in 2016, but then when Trump got elected, they put it off, and they put it off, and put it off. And now that we have this virus, they're putting it off even longer. And the Basel 3 was supposed to help the banks, and the Basel system was supposed to help the banks cushion during economic crises. But they put it off when when Trump was elected United States president. And this thing was supposed to be implemented. They kept delaying it even when Obama was in office, and then they were supposed to do it in 2016, and they decided to put it off again. Why would you keep putting that off? There was no reason for them to keep putting it off. But I think it was because who got elected. And now they're and these were supposed to be safeguards. These were supposed to be cushions to protect the economy, and they were never implemented. All right, people, so this is what we're looking for. I'm just going to go ahead and sum it up. We're looking for the financial system in the Middle East to begin to crumble. We're looking for the banking system to crumble. We're also looking at the Federal Reserve, since they are the leader of the central banking system. We're waiting for that system to fall. And we're seeing that now. And what the virus has done, it has uncovered a lot of different things concerning the financial markets, both here in the United States and in the Middle East, and also actually around the world. But when you see these two great banking systems, there's a lot of shock, because there's no, especially the Middle Eastern system, because with all the trillions of dollars they brought in oil, their economies are suffering. That's because they've been, where did all the money go? Anyways, guys, I thank you for listening. Leave a comment down below in the description. And I'm going to go ahead and there's going to be other things that I'm discussing. Like I said, I'm looking into what people think about the XRP. Stay safe. God bless. And with that being said, Twisha Krishna out.